Hello, everyone. Good morning. Bonjour, marhaba, kalimera from the Abu Dhabi International Book Fair. This is the third session of KnowTalk in a special series live from the book fair. And we are delighted to have this session about titled Oceanpreneurs, Exploring Opportunities in the Blue Economy. And we are more delighted to be having with us Marina Antonopoulou, who is Chief Officer of Climate Change and Nature Conservation at the Emirates Nature World Wildlife Fund, the WWF. Welcome, Marina, and thank you
so
for
much,
joining
Stephanie.
us.
Thank you to the organizers as well.
Thank you. So this session will be a bit different. So it won't be, Marina won't be doing any presentations. However, we will be having a fireside chat, a conversation. And so in today's session, we'll be delving into how the blue economy can be a frontier for sustainable development and for nature conservation. Thank you, Marina, again for joining us. And I'll start with the questions. So to kick things off, Marina, a personal question. Could you share how your personal passion for nature shaped your career and led you to your current role at the Emirates Nature-WWF as Chief Officer of Climate Change and Nature Conservation?
Sure, and thank you, Stephanie. I mean, it's an interesting question, and I think for me, my love and passion for nature and the sea manifested quite early in my life. I think one of my fondest memories when I was a child is when I spent my summertime on the island where I come from. The name of the island is called Kefalonia, is on the west coast of Greece, in the Ionian Sea. And I think I have fond memories, with my family, my friends, spending hours or not days by the sea, swimming, snorkeling, and generally being in awe, just watching the beauty of the marine life of the Mediterranean at that time. I was also blessed, I think, earlier on in life to witness, if you like, the connection of the local community with the sea. So I remember, again, seeing every day the fishers coming back with the boats and selling the catch of the day. But I also essentially witnessed my grandfather and my grandmother seeing how much respect they put towards nature in the way that they farm the land in the day-to-day life, right? So essentially, these memories have shaped my values and my really passion to help protect nature, right? At the end of the day, we like to protect what we truly care about. But I would also like to say that, a few years have passed since then, just few. But I also witnessed, if you like, the unprecedented change of nature and oceans, right? So I've seen places that I truly cared for, really transforming more to urbanized areas. I've seen, the pressures of tourism, you see pollution. So that also essentially created a driver in me to be part of the solution and work with others to see how we can put at the forefront of what we do on a day-to-day sustainability.
Thank you. So now I'm on an island in Greece.
We'll go there soon if you like. Happy to host you there.
I'd love to. Thank you. Now moving on to the Emirates Nature-WWF. Yes. Can you give us a bit of an overview about it and about its mission and mandate here in the UAE?
Sure. I mean, you will see we're Emirates Nature in association with WWF. So essentially, we're a UAE-based NGO, an environmental nonprofit organization. At the same time, we're affiliated with the Worldwide Fund for Nature, an international NGO present in 100+ countries around the world. We have, obviously, our mission is a local mandate to advance sustainability action here in the UAE. But at the same time, of course, we're looking into global best practice, knowledge sharing with our colleagues around the world, right? We all share the same vision. In the UAE, we have been implementing a number of projects. Our work spans across working with, alliances with private sector, whole segment of the economy towards climate action, so decarbonizing the economy of the UAE. We're working also on the ground with local communities to preserve the mountains and the coastal ecosystems of the UAE. And ultimately, what we do want to identify is where do we look at those synergies where nature and people benefit at the same time.
Yes, I don't think it's very easy to find this balance all the time. But thank you. Now, I just want to remind our audience, if they have any questions, to please drop them in the Q&A box, and I'll make sure to ask them later on. Now, moving on to the theme of the session, the blue economy. Could you explain what this entails and why marine ecosystems are so crucial for societal and economic prosperity?
Sure, of course. And I think for many people might be a surprise looking at, together the terms economy and oceans and marine ecosystems. Usually we don't really prioritize nature and oceans when it comes to economic growth. But the reality is that nowadays we do understand that nature offers us a number of socioeconomic benefits or ecosystem services, as we call it. There is a recent report from the World Economic Forum estimated that half of the world's GDP is attributed to nature. That can be because we have, we need pollinators, because we need healthy soil or water resources for food and agriculture. But specifically on the oceans, for example, fisheries is a very important sector for food security around the world. 3 billion people around the world rely on oceans when it comes to livelihoods. And of course, we have other sectors that they also rely on a healthy and stable climate, but also oceans, right? Shipping is one perhaps the most important transportation sectors. We rely a lot on transportation of our goods and services. Tourism and coastal tourism is one of the fastest growing segments globally, as well as in the UAE. But we also look at, and we see different economic sectors as well emerging that they rely on oceans. So offshore renewable energy, minerals, the requirement for minerals that they're at the bottom of the sea, as well as medicine, right? A lot of the active ingredients for our medicine and drugs are actually found from ocean resources that are hidden at the deep, seas. And of course, a lot of discussions have been happening about the last few years that oceans are the last frontier for economic development. But if you look at our oceans, they might seem vast, but they're all not endless, right? And if I use the analogy that, seeing oceans are as our savings bank account, right? If we continue withdrawing from our bank account, right, with not replenishing, the amount that we have saved, ultimately we're going to reach a point that we have zero balance in our bank account. So similarly with the nature and our ocean ecosystems, it's important that all of those sectors that rely on these resources, they invest back, let's say, on healthy oceans. Otherwise, the trajectory of the ocean ecosystems is not looking very, very healthy. And ultimately, those economic activities will be impacted, right, in the future.
Definitely. And thank you for mentioning all these sectors that are affected by the ocean preservation and that are important for the blue economy. In your view, why is it imperative that we transition towards a sustainable economic model, particularly in the context of marine conservation and the broader blue economy?
And this is a critical question. And in fact, even on the title, I would perhaps add the term sustainable blue economy here. So I think for the reasons that I mentioned earlier, right? So we see and we understand that our economies and a blue economy essentially relies on the healthy oceans, right? No doubt about that. Oceans are also our first ally when it comes to climate change, right? So oceans absorb CO2 emissions from the atmosphere. 1/3 of our emissions are actually absorbed and attributed to ocean and marine ecosystems. But also coastal ecosystems are at the front line of sea level rise, of climate change, of the increasing storm events we're already seeing actually affecting a lot of the places around the world. So these ecosystems can also protect our coastal infrastructure, our cities from those future storm events, right? So let's look at that we rely on oceans and coastal ecosystems for our economy and our human well-being. At the same time, those pressures that I mentioned earlier are becoming unprecedented, right? So every day we read daunting statistics, 8 million of waste being dumped in the oceans every year. Almost 30% of the fish stocks around the world are overexploited, right? And the list goes on. Corals are already suffering because of climate change. Coastal ecosystems are being lost. So we're losing our first, defense against climate change, and we're losing essentially what we are, owing our economic benefits to. So what WWF has done is to make sure that we need some guidance for that transition towards sustainability. We developed a set of principles to define what sustainable blue economy is. We also published a number of guidelines together with partners with the UNEP financial initiative to make sure that we provide tools to economic sectors and decision makers. So we use that term consistently. The need for a framework that everybody works towards is really important, and to also drive financing towards transitioning those economies to a sustainable model.
Thank you. And it's important you mentioned your partnership with UNEP, for example. Like, partnerships are really important to drive this this change we really want to see, and where we want to be. We are already having many questions, but I still have 2 questions, and then we can take.
Sure.
So could you actually elaborate on some of the initiatives of the Emirates Nature-WWF that you have implemented here in the United Arab Emirates, specifically focusing on ocean conservation, nature-based solutions, and sustainable economic models?
Of course. So here in the UAE, a lot of our focus has been on coastal ecosystems, and more specifically what we call coastal lagoons. So these are pockets along the coastline of the UAE, and actually in the whole region, where you find different types of coastal habitats. So here's where we find our mangrove ecosystems, our seagrass meadows, our salt marshes, mudfloods, sand dunes, essentially all coexisting together. And all these form a mosaic of what we call those coastal ecosystems. They are home to unique wildlife and also very important biodiversity. So here we find sea turtles frequenting very often those waters. We see bird species roosting and nesting. These birds are important for the international, biodiversity. And also those areas are also providing a refuge for fish species. Some of those fish species are important commercially, right, for actually food security. So essentially, if we look at those coastal lagoons, are not only hotspots for biodiversity, but they are very linked with socioeconomic benefits for our local communities. So we've been focusing a lot on these areas when it comes to oceans. And our work has been spanning across different dimensions. I'll mention just a few. The first one is science. So we have been focusing a lot in mapping those ecosystems, understanding their interactions. And why is this important? Because this is the foundation when it comes to protection. Right? We need to understand where those ecosystems are and what are the major threats. The second dimension is back to the economic side of things, is that we have completed a lot of studies that put an effort to define and quantify the economic benefits from those coastal ecosystems. We published recently a report, we call it the blue carbon assessment. So those coastal ecosystems essentially, as I mentioned earlier, absorb CO2 from the atmosphere and store it in their foliage, for example, in the case of mangroves, and in the soil underneath them. And what we did is we quantified how much carbon is stored in those coastal ecosystems. We identified that in the areas we surveyed, about 180 square kilometers that we surveyed, we found about 900,000 metric tons of carbon stored. And just to give you an analogy, this is about 94,000 car drive, journeys from Dubai to Abu Dhabi. So why I'm saying all this is that, blue carbon ecosystems can actually be a friend of ours when it comes to climate mitigation agendas, right? Countries, the UAE is eager to reduce our emissions, and this is potentially an ally for us in the future. But similarly, we've done other studies to identify how fisheries are relying on coastal ecosystems, ecotourism potential as well, and the list goes on. And the third dimension that I'd like to mention is that this information in terms of ecological status, but also the ecosystem services, is really important for us to work with partners, as you mentioned, Stephanie, local government, communities, and more importantly for us, local businesses and local entrepreneurs, and identify how can we bring them together to identify solutions or projects that can bring socioeconomic benefits and benefits for biodiversity. So just briefly, two examples. One is on ecotourism. So we're working very closely with the Al Quwain government to develop a pilot and showcase how a true sustainable model for ecotourism can work in Al Quwain that essentially supports local jobs, local entrepreneurs, but also gives back to the coastal ecosystems of the UAE. A second project we have, which we're really excited about, is around coastal plants of the UAE that can have high nutritional value for human consumption. And there's not a lot of demand locally yet. So we're trying to develop a proof of concept to see how we can enhance these coastal plants that are prominent in the UAE and how we can create, if you like, a value chain of stakeholders that essentially there is production, there is supply, and there is demand. So it can generate additional revenue for our local communities. So this is just a few examples of what we do on the ground when it comes to coastal ecosystems and oceans. And we're really excited. Again, we're going to share some insights very soon. We're going to publish some reports. So please stay tuned. Yeah, super happy to share more about it.
We will stay tuned. Thank you so much. And all these amazing projects you are mentioning, they need lots of financing for sure. I can imagine. So what role or what roles do you see for the public, private, and blended financing sectors in advancing these sustainable economic models and scaling up conservation efforts in general and in the UAE specifically?
Sure. And of course, when you mention the term finance, everybody starts paying attention. Of course, is perhaps the biggest catalyst for our economy, but also for our transition to sustainability, right? We see, the good news is that we see a lot of exponential growth of investments towards climate change action, right? So a lot of investment is going towards renewable energy technologies, transition towards, different energy models. Of course, more of it is required to meet our climate targets. But the bad news is that investments towards oceans and nature are not necessarily as exponentially growing. So we need to see not only public investment, but we also want to see the private sector playing a more important role there. The challenge here is that we do have now more understanding of what is the economic value of oceans, but that doesn't always translate into a figure, right? That can translate into market pricing and putting together robust business models or business casing, so to attract private capital. And that's where you mentioned earlier the term blended finance. So this is a potential solution, if you like. We have a toolbox of solutions that we want to bring forward, a potential solution to bring in different types of capital. So you have, the government, as we mentioned earlier, you have development funding from, for example, from UNDP, but also philanthropic capital in impact investors, right? So this type of financing typically comes in first to help us develop projects that they are, geared in terms of innovation, help us do a lot of research and development, build partnerships that, they haven't been built before. Transitioning sustainable fisheries, right? It requires a whole shebang of relationships with stakeholders and a lot of information to be collected and test, a lot of assumptions. With our pilot project with the coastal plants that I mentioned, we need to invest a lot of, efforts into the work on the ground, test, look at what works, what doesn't, invest in nutritional analysis. So this doesn't always come from a private sector, right? These are a risky business for a private sector. And that's where for us, for example, this project is financed by HSBC philanthropic contributions. This is the first seed investment until we're ready to provide a pipeline of projects that can bring private investors as well in. So yeah, that's kind of a little bit it, of course. And again, happy to discuss that with the audience and with you, of course.
Thank you, and good luck in getting all the financing you need.
Thank you.
Inshallah. So how can individuals get involved? Do you provide any volunteering opportunities, any capacity building, perhaps workshops?
Yeah, wonderful question. And in fact, I should have mentioned that earlier. So for the audience who's based in the UAE, of course, you can sign up to a program called Leaders of Change. We have a lot of volunteering opportunities offering to the public the chance to come with us in the field, be part of our conservation journey. We're literally, doing the monitoring activities together with our volunteers. So that's first. But obviously do join us, right? We have a lot of opportunities for people to participate in an online seminars and so on. In terms of partnerships, all of our projects are underpinned by partnerships. So again, individuals, experts, local government, local communities are very much welcome to be part of this journey. So I think it's just a matter of, either reach out to me or to the websites, to the team, and we're happy to connect.
Thank you. So that's another question from the audience. We need first to evaluate the economic loss before bringing the term blue economy and promote it. How can we ensure it is a just blue transition?
Very good point. So I'm with you. So in terms of how do we advance solutions is very important to always ground our work in terms of providing evidence, understanding where the pressures are, understanding the whole sort of ecosystem of players. So that's also I'm with you. We're kind of working towards that end. But also what we find is that only talk about problems sometimes can be really daunting. So we're actively looking for solutions, right? Developing proof of concepts of a positive example can be much more powerful, always grounded, of course, on science. And just to mention that a lot of our projects are geared to what we call nature-based solutions to essentially solve a challenge, right? So either climate change, either pollution. So absolutely, this is kind of the way forward when it comes to our efforts.
Yes, you always need to try to turn threats and problems into opportunities. Now, how will economies finance the blue economy and transition, particularly in low-income and small economies?
Sorry, do you mind repeating that question?
So, yes. So how will economies finance the blue economy, especially when we are talking about small economies and low-income countries?
So I think, again, blended finance, it's potentially an interesting one to consider. Of course, we need to mobilize a lot of development funding, a lot of government funding, but always geared towards a sustainability performance, right? We've seen some countries also turning their national debt into an opportunity. So we've seen Seychelles, for example, launching a blue bond, which is all geared about sustainability of fisheries, about marine protected areas. And we've seen that trend in terms of debt swaps around the world. Belize and other countries similarly have similar initiatives to turn an economic relatively poor situation into an opportunity, but always with the condition to deliver a sustainable blue economy and putting back in what we're talking earlier, the healthy ocean ecosystems. This is just an example, of course, right? There's plenty of other examples. And I think also in the least developed economies, it's important to work, I mean, even here with the local communities, right? Local communities are at the forefront of the pressures. They are the ones who also have been seeing the changes. So I think is absolutely critical to work with the local communities.
Definitely, and solutions need to be localized and customized to the context. And this is why it's important that it is Emirates Nature-WWF.
Yes.
So it is really localized. So in terms of localization, I'm not even going to go there because you are already doing it. Now, how can citizens contribute to the advancement or to the achievement of this sustainable blue economy?
I think, again, like the list is vast. So day to day, changing our mindsets, changing the way, we consume products, opting always for sustainability type of products, asking a lot of questions as well, learn a lot more. I think that awareness is really important in order to change behavior. I think as individuals also, we have sometimes a professional capacity. So again, being an advocate within our company towards sustainability is also important, and see how much we can change, the mindset within our corporate. But obviously, again, there's a lot of, depending on which country you're based, I'm sure there is conservation groups very active on the ground. There is citizen science programs, for example, here in the UAE by our organization and others. So it's just a matter of signing up. And I think once you have that experience, on the ground, you get your hands dirty, boots on the ground, I think there is that transformation. So going back to your initial question to me about my passion and love for nature, a lot of, my colleagues share something similar, right? So it's these transformative experiences we have that make us start caring about nature and ultimately becoming an advocate for it.
Thank you. Now to wrap up, I have 3 quick this or that questions for you.
So sure.
The first one, When it comes to ocean conservation, would you prioritize policy change or community engagement?
I would say both. I would not say it's one or the other. Communities engagement is really required because they are at the front line. They're implementing, different activities. But policy is also very important because they can be an enabler, right? They can provide incentives. They can shape, if you like, a framework that can enable more financing or more sustainability principles implemented on the ground. So I would say it's not necessarily one or the other. They really needed both of them at the same time.
Yes. In terms of funding and financing, do you see more potential in public grants or private investments for sustainable projects?
So typically, it has been the role of the government and public, financing towards ocean sustainability. But the reality is that we cannot keep up, right? The pressures are huge. We need innovation. We need private capital. So that's kind of the trend, right? And the idea is, how do we bring the private sector closer into actually financing those projects? And just to go back a little bit also on the finance side of things, as Emirates Nature-WWF, we are, investing philanthropic contributions we get from our donors into the solutions. But ultimately, we do see, the whole ecosystem of players as potential recipients of this financing, right? Developing projects with the private sector, with the local communities, that they can be recipients of the different grants and blended finance capital.
One last one, looking at marine species protection, would you focus more on endangered species or on preserving biodiversity at large?
Interesting question. And maybe I have to choose one, perhaps. But it's very difficult to say. I think it also depends on the local context and what one can do with the potential resources we have. As Emirates Nature, at the moment, we are working a little bit more holistically at an ecosystem-based approach. So as I mentioned earlier, coastal lagoons. So we're looking at that as a seascape where, endangered species, coastal ecosystems, and people actually are forming, part of one system. That's our approach at the moment. But sometimes you might need to look at the specificity of an endangered species, right? So marine turtles, for example, are migratory. So just protecting their nesting ground is not going to be a sufficient measure to protect this population. So I'd say it really depends on the local and regional specificity and what we can achieve. And of course, again, partnerships, right? There's organizations out there that they do a lot. So the idea is, how do we build those connections with the different initiatives across the board?
Thank you so much, Marina. So I think that's a wrap. And with Labor Day today, I think we've got lots of work to do in terms of the blue economy.
Lots of work, of course.
Yes, and happy Labor Day, everyone. And thank you for joining us.
Labor Day.
Thank you so much, Marina, again.
Thank you so much as well to UNDP, the MBRF, and so happy to be here.
Thank you. And we hope this session will really inspire you to take changes and understand more what building a sustainable blue economy is. And we see you tomorrow one more time with a session on green investments, I think, to complement what we're discussing today. So see you tomorrow and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you to the audience as well, and happy, of course, to connect with all
of you.
Thank you.
And thank you to everyone in the back end, colleagues, technical team, interpreters. Thank you.